He says, for the foolishness of God is wiser than human wisdom, and the weakness of God is stronger than human strength. You go down to chapter 3, 1 Corinthians 3, verse 19, he says, for the wisdom of this world is foolishness in God's sight. In other words, we can turn it around and say, for this world, God's wisdom can also become foolishness. As it is written, he catches the wise in their craftiness. With this in mind, we can now analyze what happened at the fall of Jericho. So our passage for tonight is entitled The Fall of Jericho. This is in Joshua chapter 6. We'll start from verse 1. But before we read Joshua 6, telling us the events that took place in the fall of Jericho, I want to give you a historical context. You go back to the book of Numbers, and we go to the 13th chapter, verses 17 to 33, Numbers 13, verse 17 to 33. I will summarize it for you. We know that at this time, in the place known as Kadesh Barnea, Moses sent 12 spies to go and spy the land which God had promised them, the land of Canaan. They were to assess the population strength, city fortifications, land productivity, and such kind of things, so that when they go there, they are prepared. The 12 went, spied the land. They traveled from north to south, east to west, and came back with a report. The people gathered, and the report was given. The 12 agreed that the land is rich. It is as God had described it, a land that flows with milk and honey. They actually had brought a bunch of grapevine with some pomegranates, and the people were convinced this is a good land. So as they were finishing the agreed report, now came the question, can we go in or not? The 12 got divided. 2 were of the opinion, that's Joshua and Caleb, that we can go in with the leadership of God and take the land, because the land has been promised to us and has been given to us by God. But the 10, whose names I'll not give you here, you can read them in the Bible, decided that the report here has to change. According to them, they said, we cannot attack those people, and we cannot enter into that land. We cannot even enter into their cities. Why? Because the people there are giants. They are huge. The cities are well fortified. The walls are thick and high. In fact, they described themselves as looking like grasshoppers before the people. That's how we looked before their eyes, and that's how we looked in our own eyes before them. As usual, if a fort was to be taken, the 10 would carry the day. The people accepted the report of the 10, and they ignored the report of the 2. The 2 tried to preach. Caleb tried to tell them, if God is for us, who can be against us? The people did not listen. They got discouraged and blamed Moses for bringing them out there, blamed God for taking them out of Egypt and bringing them to die in the hands of the giants of Canaan. In fact, they went on to pray that it would be better for them to die in the desert than to go and die in the hands of the Canaanites. There are times you can put God on the spot in such a way that God ends up answering your prayer, even though it is against his will. This is one of those places where God answered the people's prayer against his will. They wished they would die in the desert and demanded it. And God answered their prayer. He said, okay, all of you adults, 20 years and above, you want to die in the desert? I'm going to add time. Actually ended up being 40 years for you, so that each one of you will die in the desert, except for my faithful servants, Joshua and Caleb. We know that they wandered in the desert for the next 40 years, and all those who were 20 years and above died. Now, with this in mind, we can now go to Joshua chapter 6, and we'll be reading from verse 1. Joshua has been given a vision by an angel of God who promises him that God has given you the city of Jericho. But as they come to Jericho, the gates of Jericho, I'm reading from verse 1, the gates of Jericho were securely barred because of the Israelites. No one went out and no one came in. Then the Lord said to Joshua, see, I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its king and its fighting men. March around the city once with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times with the priests blowing the trumpets. When you hear them sound a long blast on the trumpets, have the whole army give a loud shout. Then the wall of the city will collapse and the army will go up, everyone straight in. So Joshua, son of Nun, by the way, his name was Oshea, it's Moses who gave him the name Joshua, called the priests and said to them, take up the ark of the covenant of the Lord and have 7 priests carry trumpets in front of it. And he ordered the army, advance, march around the city with an armed guard going ahead of the ark of the Lord. In other words, the arrangement was ahead there is an armed guard, then 7 priests with trumpets made from ram's horns, then the Ark of the Covenant, and then another guard behind the Ark of the Covenant. When Joshua had spoken to the people, the 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets before the Lord went forward, blowing their trumpets, and the Ark of the Lord's Covenant followed them. The armed guard marched ahead of the priests who blew the trumpets, and the rear guard followed the ark. All this time, the trumpets were sounding, But Joshua had commanded the army, do not give a war cry. Do not raise your voices. Do not say a word until the day I tell you to shout. Then shout. So he had the ark of the Lord carried around the city, circling it once. Then the army returned to the camp and spent the night. Joshua got up early the next morning and did the same. On the seventh day, they got up at daybreak and marched around the city 7 times in the same manner, with the priests blowing the trumpets. Except that on that day, they circled the city 7 times. The 7th time around, when the priests sounded the trumpet blast, Joshua commanded the army, shout, for the Lord has given you the city. The city and all that is in it are to be devoted to the Lord. We'll go down to verse 20. When the trumpets sounded, the army shouted, and at the sound of the trumpet, when the men gave a loud shout, the wall collapsed. So everyone charged straight in, and they took the city. That's where we'll stop for now. What do you think this kind of activity meant to the Israelites? You think it made sense to the Israelites that you can go and march around the city once every day, and on the 7th day, you march 7 times and blow the trumpets and shout, and the walls come down? You think that made sense? It is by faith that Joshua followed the instructions of marching around the city. There was no magic in the trumpets, there was no magic in the marching, and there was no magic in the shouting. Joshua followed instructions, and the people followed their leaders' instruction. Was this a logical and reasonable activity for the people? No. Logic would dictate that the people should have been carrying battering rams, sledgehammers, and other stone and brick breaking tools so that they could go and try to chip away the wall. How could just marching around a city bring the wall down? It's a question that all of us ask ourselves. The people did as they were instructed. Remember, it has taken them 40 years to learn this lesson of faith and trust. The first time they came to the borders of Canaan at Kadesh Barnea, they did not make it in because they did not believe or trust in God. Caleb tried to tell them, God is with us. We can make it. But the people did not believe it. They looked like grasshoppers before the Canaanites, and that scared them off, leave alone the fact that the walls were well fortified. 40 years later, the walls have not changed. They are fortified. Jericho is just one city in Canaan that we are using as an example. This is how most of the other cities were. The people have not become shorter or smaller. They are the same giants, the huge giants who made them feel and look like grasshoppers. But at this time, they are willing to do and to go as the Lord has commanded. Their faith, they have learned the lesson of faith, but it has taken them 40 years. By now, they know that success requires only that they trust and depend on their God. even though it looks like foolishness, that marching around the city can make the walls of the city fall. There is no logic in it. It's sheer foolishness. They are willing to go ahead by faith because it is God who has instructed. What do you think the exercise looked like for the people in the city, in Jericho? Imagine how this experience must have looked like for the people in Jericho. Anybody who watched the exercise must have wondered what had gone wrong with the people. How is it possible that all these people have become crazy? They're just marching like they're dancing around the city. What is their aim? What do you expect? What do they expect to achieve out of this? Imagine a kid in the evening seated with the parents at the dinner table, and the kid says, "Why are the Israelites behaving like this? Strangely, they're just marching around the city every day. They just come here and blow trumpets and march around and go. What are they looking for?" The parents probably would come up with an answer, a scientific answer like this. You know, during evolution, there is a section of the brain which still needs to continue to evolve. It delays. For these people, that section is far behind ours. Ours has evolved enough. Now we don't behave like them. But for them, they need more time to be able to have that part of their brain developed enough. So the people, sorry, I'm reading a wrong thing for you. You know, for these people, that section still depends on instinct. That's why they are marching like sheep, following the leading sheep. The other sheep follow from behind. They don't know any better. That's why they are behaving the way they are behaving. And the kid probably gets satisfied because that is the kind of education the kid gets in the school. In other words, what God instructs his people to do looks like foolishness to the people, both the Israelites and the Canaanites in Jericho. The difference is that the Israelites have learned their lesson, even though it has taken 40 years. They are willing to follow this foolishness because it is their God with whom they have developed or they have experienced a close relationship. It's the one who has said, do this. Conclusions. Number one, things of God may not always look logical or reasonable. Nevertheless, they are the only ones guaranteed to succeed. He's the only one who knows the end from the beginning. Ellen White says in the book Ministry of Healing, page 479, God never leads his children otherwise than they would choose to be led, if they could see the end from the beginning and discern the glory of the purpose which they are fulfilling as co-workers with him. Number two, God has not denied us the opportunity to think and to do. He has only asked us to allow him to lead and guide. He encourages us to trust him enough to let him choose our course of action. Number three, sometimes those paths that God chooses for us might look longer because there are others where you can cut corners. They might look tedious. They might look unpaved and rough. But remember, God has not promised a smooth path. He has only promised a safe landing. Can we trust him to lead us and let him land us, because his landing is guaranteed to be safe? Is the question for tonight. Thank you very much for listening to me, and may God bless you as you contemplate on how not only to let God lead, but follow his ways even when his ways don't look logical.